she noticed something that almost everyone else chose to ignore. At a high-profile charity event filled with glittering gowns, sharp suits, and conversations soaked in wealth, a little girl sat quietly at the edge of the crowd. She wasn't part of the laughter, the clinking glasses, or the endless chatter. She wasn't even approached by those who smiled at everyone else in the room. Why? Because the child was different. She was the daughter of one of the wealthiest men in the city, a billionaire whose presence commanded attention everywhere he went. But the girl, despite her striking appearance and warm eyes, carried a silence that made others uncomfortable. She was deaf. People didn't know how to talk to her. Some avoided eye contact, some smiled awkwardly, and most simply pretended she wasn't there. It was as though her silence made her invisible. But then, something unexpected happened. In the middle of all the noise, one woman noticed the child's loneliness. Instead of turning away, she walked toward her with a kind smile. The girl looked up, almost surprised that someone had chosen to approach her. And then it happened. The woman raised her hands and began to speak in a language most people in that room didn't understand. She used sign language. For the first time that evening, the child's face lit up. Her eyes widened. A smile spread across her face, and her tiny hands immediately began to respond with signs of her own. The joy was unmissable, the excitement undeniable. Everyone else in the room had ignored her. But this woman, an ordinary guest among extraordinary wealth, gave her something priceless: recognition, inclusion, and genuine care. What no one expected was that the simple act of kindness would not only move the young girl, but would also leave her billionaire father speechless. The same man who was used to people flattering him, chasing his attention, and admiring his wealth, was now humbled by someone who had chosen to see not him, but his child. This was not just a casual moment at an event. It was a powerful reminder that humanity, empathy, and connection matter more than all the riches in the world. And as you'll hear in this story, what followed after that first conversation in sign language would go on to create a bond that transformed not only the life of the young girl, but also left a lasting impact on her father. The woman who reached out that evening wasn't looking for recognition. She wasn't chasing business deals, connections, or attention. She simply couldn't stand to watch a child being left out. The billionaire's daughter, despite her family's wealth, was no stranger to isolation. At school, many children didn't know how to include her in games. At social events, adults avoided long interactions because they didn't understand her silence. Even in crowds, she often felt alone. But this time was different. When the woman began signing, it wasn't just about communication, it was about acknowledgement. She looked directly at the girl, not past her. She didn't lower her voice as if speaking to someone fragile. Instead, she treated her as a complete person, someone worth engaging with fully. The girl's response was immediate and powerful. She smiled, laughed silently, and began signing rapidly. For a moment, it was as though the noise of the entire event faded, and all that mattered was the connection happening between them. The father watched from across the room. At first, he was puzzled. He was used to seeing people rush toward him, eager to impress, never toward his daughter. He noticed his child's excitement, the joy on her face, and the animated way she responded. He moved closer. When he realized what was happening, that this woman had taken the time to learn sign language and was speaking to his daughter fluently, his eyes softened. For years, he had struggled with the painful reality that his child often felt excluded. He had tried tutors, special schools, even interpreters, but nothing could erase the quiet loneliness that seemed to follow her. That night, however, something changed. His daughter wasn't on the sidelines anymore. She was glowing, laughing, and fully engaged. The father finally approached, thanking the woman quietly. His words were sincere, but the emotion in his voice carried something deeper, gratitude that someone had seen his daughter for who she was, not for what she lacked. But this story didn't end with that single evening. The woman's decision to connect through sign language had lasting effects. She stayed in touch with the family, often meeting the girl, continuing conversations, and sharing moments where the child felt fully understood. She became more than just an acquaintance. She became a friend and an ally. For the girl, this was life-changing. No longer did she feel invisible. Knowing that someone outside her family cared enough to learn her language made her feel valued in a world that so often overlooked her. The billionaire father, too, was deeply impacted. Despite his wealth and influence, he realized he had overlooked something priceless, the simple yet powerful gift of connection. Money could buy schools, tutors, and resources, but it couldn't buy genuine human empathy. The woman reminded him that kindness doesn't need wealth. True wealth is measured in compassion, in the ability to recognize the humanity in others, especially those who are often ignored. Over time, the father began funding programs for children with hearing impairments, ensuring they had access to sign language education, interpreters, and inclusive opportunities. What started as one woman's simple act of kindness became the spark for a larger movement of change. The young girl grew stronger, more confident, and more willing to interact with others. She knew she had a voice, even if it wasn't spoken out loud. And she knew there were people in the world who would listen. The woman's role in her life proved something profound. Sometimes, the greatest impact comes not from grand gestures but from choosing to see someone when the rest of the world looks away. This story is not about wealth, fame, or power. It is about recognition, the ability to see someone for who they truly are. When everyone else ignored the billionaire's deaf daughter, one woman chose to reach out in her language. That decision changed everything. It reminded the world that kindness is a universal language, one more powerful than money, status, or privilege. And sometimes, the most extraordinary change begins with the simplest act: choosing to connect.